Nous sommes le Subcommittee des droits.
This is the Subcommittee on International Human Rights of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. This is the 21st meeting of our committee.
A number of witnesses. I'll just read off their names. Well, I've been discussing with them, and they have an order in which they would like to make their presentations to us.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Just, let me just finish doing the introductions, and then I'll recognize Madame Deschamps. Majed Al-Shafi is the president of One Free World International. He'll be going first. And then I'm going to go through in the order we're going to have our presentations, which varies from the order in which you see them here. Second, Chantal Desloges, an immigration lawyer, will be speaking to us. She will be followed by Peter Batty, who's the president of International Christian Voice. Fourth will be Suzanne Thomas, who's the director of the Office of Intergovernmental Relations for the Baha'i Community of Canada. And finally, Firidun Zia will be making a presentation through his interpreter, Danny Youssef. I just wanted to mention as well that we are going to have to save some time at the end of this meeting for a number of items that have to be dealt with in camera. We'll have to play that a little bit by ear, but we will have to give ourselves a fair bit of time, I think at least 20 minutes. That will unfortunately necessitate all the problems that go along with going in camera. As a final note, just a reminder to committee members that our clerk has arranged for us to have lunch, and you're free to help yourselves to some food. I do not intend to suspend any of our hearings to give time for the food. However, you've got to make your own provisions in that regard, given the shortness of time. Now, before going to our committees, Madame Deschamps, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your introduction, you did specify a few things about having some time towards the end of the meeting in order to discuss my matter, and you stated, it's all right? Is that all right? Would you like me to repeat that? So I'll repeat that. You mentioned it in your introduction, the question that I was actually going to ask you, in other words, whether at the end of our meeting this afternoon, whether we would have enough time to discuss future business, and I had a few points to raise. Yes, thank you. Yes, I think 20 minutes should be sufficient.
Okay. Let's start then, and actually, we might just give our witnesses a moment. It looks like they're still working on some technical issues there. In that case, while we're waiting, may I just ask the clerk, we had a couple of presentations. Have they been distributed now? Translated and distributed?
From this group, sir?
Yes.
Yes, they have.
One written presentation from Mr. Al-Shafi, and one as well, I believe, from Suzanne Thomas. Did that get distributed as well?
Yes, sir, it has.
Okay, good. Mr. Al-Shafi, are you ready, or are you still working on
there is some technical difficulties, Mr. Chair. The evidence that we took from the committee was supposed to be translated in English and in French, and it looked like that the tape is blank, so there is no.
Do you have an translate?
Okay. appreciate that. All right, as I understand it, what's happened is that there was to be a presentation in which some translation was to occur of the, I guess, an audio-visual presentation. Is that correct?
And presentation and evidence that it was in English and we needed to translate it as well in French for the committee. And for reason or another, the copy that we received was just blank copy. I would just start, and I'm sure that they will be able to work something.
I'm sure our translators will be competent and be able to carry along and provide
Yes.
simultaneous translation. So
Yes.
I would ask you please to begin, Mr. Al-Shafi.
Okay. My name is Reverend Majid Shafi. I'm founder and president of One Free World International, a human rights organization focusing on the rights of the religious minority around the world. I'm here today to discuss with you 3 countries, Iraq, Egypt, and Pakistan, the violation that's happening to the persecuted Christians there, as well as the minorities. Let me just give you, in general, the general picture of the persecuted Christians today around the world. There is 1 persecuted Christian every 3 minutes worldwide. Last year, over 165,000 Christians was killed for their faith, between 200 to 300 million persecuted Christians worldwide. Sadly, 80% from the persecuted Christians, they are living in Muslim countries, and another 20% they will be living in communist countries such as China, North Korea, and Cuba. And some of them living in India on the hand of the Hindu extremists. Today I will be speaking about the specific areas of the Pacific 3 countries, Iraq, Egypt, and Pakistan. Starting by Iraq. The population of Iraq is 27 million. The situation of the refugee right now, there is 4 million being displaced, 2 million being displaced internally, and 2 million is displaced on the border of Syria and Jordan. Between 60 to 65%, the population of Iraq, between 60 to 65% is Shia. Between 32 to 37 is Sunni. The minorities there, even that the Christianity predate Islam by few centuries in Iraq. Today, the Iraq is just small little minorities, is around 3%. Of the minorities include another minorities. That's, the Christians in Iraq is around 800,000 to 1 million. Half of them flee their homes. The another half is under attacks in Iraq. There is the one who flee, they have no jobs. The one who right now on the border, for example, they have no jobs. They have no medical insurance. They have no education, food, clean water. They have nothing, basically. And they cannot go back again to Iraq. They cannot go back again to their homes. That's why, basically, because they are facing attacks from the extremists on both sides, from the Sunni and from the Shia. Because they are Christian faith, number one, because they are different, because they have a different faith. But number 2, because they are Christians like the Westerners. So, for the extremist eyes, they are basically like Western cooperators, they are traitors, they are basically, they are like spies, because they are on the same religion like the Americans, the same religion of the West. The Iraqi government cannot protect them. Why the Iraqi government cannot protect them? 3 reasons. Number 1, the Iraqi government is very weak government. They cannot protect even themselves, basically. The second thing, that the people that work, the Iraqi government, the people that they are working with the law enforcement or police or army, they are, most of them, 90% of them, more than 90% of them, they will be Sunni or Shia. They are basically, they will take sides of their own community against the Christians there. And as we will hear from our witnesses later on, that even the police there in Iraq that kidnapped his, like part of the police or the people who kidnapped his son was basically, some of them was in the police forces in Iraq. Thank you. The second reason why I don't believe that the Iraqi government cannot protect the Christians and the minorities there is Article 2. Article 2 from the Iraqi law, from the Iraqi legislation, is Islam is the official religion of the state and is the fundamental source of the legislation. No law or another religion practice contract the Sharia law. So basically, any kind of practice, any kind of law that against the Sharia cannot be actually work in Iraq, and that would be actually against the Christians and the minorities. The Americans cannot protect them in Iraq. First of all, because the Americans themselves, they have a bigger problem. Second, if the Americans protected the Christians in Iraq and the minorities in Iraq, especially the Christians, they will be proving that the minorities, that the Christians is actually betrayers. If the Americans protect them, this would be actually a proof that the Christians is working with the Americans. So the Americans do not protect the Christians in Iraq. They cannot protect themselves because basically they are the only unarmed group in Iraq. The Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurdish, they are armed group. The Iraqis is the only group is not protected. Where is the evidence? What is the evidence of that? As we can see in front of you, the attacks started around August 1st, 2004. 5 churches was bombed in one day. Can we start the PowerPoint, please? From the beginning.
You need it back at the beginning.
Okay. So the attacks started around August 1st, 2004. 5 churches were bombed in one day. 4 in Baghdad, 1 in Mosul, 12 was killed, 60 was injured, including a couple that they were engaged to be married that weekend. Go ahead, go with me. Keep going. This is the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, Baghdad. 10 people was killed. 2 were injured. Two of the 10 people that were killed was engaged to be married that weekend. Keep going. This is Church of Mar Elia Al-Hiri, and the picture of Mazin Bolo. He sacrificed himself to save the people inside the church. Go ahead. St. George Assyrian Church in Baghdad was attacked twice. The first time was attacked in October 2004, and before the cross was still standing, was attacked again in May 2007. Church of Sayyidat al-Najat, Our Lady of Salvation, Baghdad. Church Sayyidat al-Zuhur, Our Lady of Flowers. And from the 2004 until our present day, the attacks continues. Some of the priests was kidnapped, was tortured. A lot of them was killed. A few of them returned back home. The one who returned back home, that's when their families paid ransom to free them after they've been tortured. From the one who never returned home, Father Bolus Iskandar, 52 years old. He was kidnapped in 2006 in Mosul. After his kidnapped by 2 years, he was found in the street slaughtered. They slaughtered him. After that, Father Ragid Ghani, 35 years old, he was gunned down in 2007 in Mosul, he and 3 of his cantors, because he refused to close the church. As we can see, Father Ghani, he was shot 3 times in the face. One of them was close range in his eye. In May 2007, let's stop here for a second. In May 2007, Baghdad Dora neighborhood, the Muslim extremists forced the Christian community to pay something called jizya. What is jizya? Is basically a tax, to force them to pay tax to spare their lives. If they didn't pay, and if they are poor, they cannot pay, they basically force them to flee out of the neighborhood. And the Christian was forced to flee out of their homes in this day in May 2007 by the clothes on their back. The church that we are seeing right now is St. Mary Cathedral. It was bombed in September 24. 2 were killed, 2 was injured. We are having here one of the survivors, and actually one of the heroes that try to protect the people and try to save the people as possible as he can, is Mr. Zaya beside me, and he will be sharing his testimony later on. It was in this exact church. Mr. Chair, some people, or some politicians, or even human rights activists, they will call this, what they call it, ethnic cleansing. I don't know if you ever hear this expression or not. Some people will call this ethnic cleansing. And this is a politically correct expression, and I will tell you why. Because when you say ethnic cleansing, it's different than when you say is the beginning of genocide. That's not ethnic cleansing. That's a genocide. This is a beginning of the genocide of the Christian community in Baghdad, in Iraq, sorry. Now, of course, if we said genocide, this will force the governments to take an action, because according to the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, you must take an action if this is genocide. So the people, what they say, the ethnic cleansing, that's not ethnic cleansing. That's a genocide, and I will prove it to you, because the Convention defines genocide as that. Any of the following act committed with intent to destroy in whole or in private or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflict on the group condition of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So all of this condition exists today in Iraq. When you try to kill, when you try to force all of them to leave, when you try to kill the community, when you try to put condition on the life such as paying the jizya, this is a beginning of genocide. This is not ethnic cleansing. This is a straightforward beginning of genocide. Talking about Egypt, I'm just trying to run because of time. So let's talk about Egypt. When it comes to Egypt, I will speak about 3 groups. I will be speaking about the persecuted Christians in Egypt. I will be speaking about the Jewish community and rising of the anti-Semitism in Egypt. And I will be speaking about the Baha'i community briefly. Egypt was a Christian country. Let's just a historical fact. Egypt used to be a Christian country in the 7th century until a man by the name of Umar ibn al-As, he entered Egypt. He basically fought with the Christians. He killed most of them. He forced most of them to convert to Islam. And today, as we know it, Egypt is a Muslim country. Okay. The Christians today is around 10% of the population, which is around 82 million. Is around 10%, which is between 8 to 10 million Christians in Egypt. As we are talking now in this beautiful, wonderful place, the Temple of the Freedom in Canada, there is at least between 6,000 to 7,000 Christians activists in jails in Egypt as we are talking right now. They are simply just asking for their rights. That's as simple as this. According to the Egyptian law, there is something in the Egyptian law is called Al-Khatt al-Hamayuni law. It's a law that you cannot build churches. You can build mosques, you can build bar, discotheque, whatever you can build, but not churches. This is by the Egyptian law. It's called Al-Khatt al-Hamayuni law. You cannot even rebuild or fix the old churches. If you need to fix your old church, you need permission from the president himself, which can take 40 years to have something like that. Christians been attacked on daily basis. Some light attacks, some heavy attacks. Some of the heavy attacks is El Kashh massacre, January 2000. The same village, the El Kashh village, this was a second attack on the village related to another attack in 1998. In the year 2000, mob of Muslim extremists went to the village, started to attack the Christian community. 21 Christians was killed, hundreds of homes, shops was destroyed. No arrest was made, and basically nobody was ever found guilty. Moreover, there was over 1,000 Christians was arrested by the Egyptian authority. They are the victims, and the Egyptian authority did not arrest the one who did this crime. No, they went and they arrested over 1,000 Christians in El Kashh village. And this has happened in the year 2000. Now, the Egyptian government denied, and they said, we challenge you. If you ever can find us one name of these people who was arrested. And the Egyptian government was right. We did not succeed to bring one name. No. In my hand, I have 1,014 names of these people that they was arrested, their names, their addresses, their age, how they was tortured, and the date of their arrest and the date of their release. In my hand, and I'm ready to give it to the committee. It's still in Arabic language, so I can translate it later on, give it to you, whatever you like. In October 2005, church in Alexandria have a play called I Was Blind and Now I Can See. The play was basically about a Muslim man, a Christian who converted to Islam and back again converted again to Christianity. The Muslim community wasn't very happy about it. 5,000 Muslims attacked the church at this time. 90 people was injured, 4 was killed. 90 people was injured, one of them was stabbed, and 4 people was killed. The police tried to stop the demonstration but didn't succeed 100%. During another incident, during pre-Easter celebration in April 14, 2006, 3 armed men with knives, they went to 3 churches in Alexandria. The church of Mar Girgis Church, Saint Church in Sidi Bish, and church in Bura. The police was present to provide security, didn't do anything to stop the 3 men with the knives. They attacked the church in pre-Easter celebration. 1 was killed, 12 was wounded. The police arrested 1, and they told him that he's mentally ill, and basically he was released after that. The funeral next day to the victim, the police attacked the funeral, and there was a clash between the authority and the Christian community. May 11, 2007, 7 churches, shops, and several homes was set on fire in an area called village of Banha, south of Egypt. At least 10 Christians was hurt. Some of them was first-degree burn. Some of them was breaking bone, sparked by rumors that the Christian community was building a church without permit. This was a rumor. The imam, or the head of the local church, local mosque in this area, after the Friday prayer, he asked from the Muslim community to stand up and to attack the Christian community. This imam, this Muslim preacher, is paid by the Egyptian government. He's paid by the Egyptian government. His salary comes from the Egyptian government. And the attack occurred in May 11, 2007. The police arrested several Muslims, and after that they was released immediately. No one found guilty. 2 weeks ago, in Saturday, May 31, 2008, just 2 weeks ago, in a monastery by the name Deir Abu Fana, 30 kilometers south of Minya, upper of Egypt, 5 p.m., 70 armed men attacked the monastery, burned the Bibles, destroyed the cross and the altar, and kidnapped 3 monks, and 4 of the monks was hurt. So there was 7 monks, 3 was kidnapped, and 4 was hurt. The case of Mr. Magdi Yusuf. Mr. Magdi Yusuf was supposed to be one of our witnesses today. He didn't come because basically he have a child, he have a daughter in Egypt that he's worried about her safety. The case of Magdi Yusuf is a case that Canada personally was involved in it. Magdi Yusuf was a Coptic Christian that came here to Canada asking for a refugee because he's persecuted back home. The IRB, the Immigration Refugee Board of Immigration Refugee Board, they basically said there is no persecution happening to the Christians in Egypt. You're lying. They sent him back again to Egypt. He was arrested. He was deported September 14, 2006. Upon his arrival to Cairo, he was arrested by the SSI, State Security Intelligence. Upon his arrival to Cairo Airport, he was tortured in Tanta headquarters, the SSI headquarters in Tanta. He was tortured by 2 officers. Number 1 officer is El Hijab, this is his name. The second officer is Farouk Hosni. Both of them tortured him, and we took the case and we took it to the Canadian government. The Honorable Jason Kenney helped us a lot in this case, and thank you very much for standing with Magdi Yusuf. And Magdi Yusuf today is here in Canada. But after he paid very high price, this man was tortured twice in his life. Talking about the Jewish community in Egypt and rising of the anti-Semitism. The Jewish community in Egypt is around 100 to 200, most of them elders. Even there is peace agreement between the Egyptians and Israel for 25 years now, or more than 25 years. There is rising of the anti-Semitism in the school, in the education system, in the media, raising new generation for hate, basically. Hostile propaganda in both official and unofficial fora, calling the Jewish people Nazis, cold-blooded killers, and denying the Holocaust. The hostile propaganda such as Al Ahram newspaper. Al Ahram newspaper is basically the official newspaper in Egypt. This basically paid by the Egyptian government, is controlled by the Egyptian government. The chief of the chief and the editor of this newspaper is called Ibrahim Nafa. He's appointed by the Egyptian president. Ibrahim Nafa, in October 10, 2000, he issued an article saying that the Jewish people, they use Arab children blood to make Passover matzah. That was basically the article that Mr. Ibrahim Nafa wrote in the Al Ahram newspaper, the official newspaper of Egypt. He was sued by the International League Against Racism and Anti-Semitism, in Paris. The French court called him. He refused to appear in front of the court. His excuse was health condition, because his medical condition. The guy, he traveled something like 35 times a year to different 35 countries, and he couldn't go to France. Cartoons such as that said in the Egyptian newspaper, basically insulting the Christians and the Jew, such as Bush holding the cross as he is a crusader, as he speaks on behalf of the Christian faith, and such as, with regard to anti-Semitism, in 21 April 21st, 2001, print cartoons that basically showing that the Israelis is squeezing Palestinians' blood and they are drinking this blood. And this was in 2001. But in March 6 to 12, 2008, the Ahram Weekly, which is also the Egyptian government newspaper, they publish a cartoon by Barak and Olmert holding Palestinian children, and they are cooking them in a pot, written on the pot, Holocaust, and they are eating them. In March 6, 2008, a cartoon was published by Ayub Barak standing on a pile of, what do they call it here? This thing.
Skulls.
Skulls, thank you. I'm sorry, English is not my first language, and when I get tired, I really lose it. So I'm sorry about that. And it was a very stressful day from the beginning. Ayub Barak standing on the pile of the dead Palestinians should be, and he's asking from the Israeli Air Force to kill all the Palestinians and to cause Holocaust, and he's wearing the swastika. In February 7, 2008, Hamas, when it was crossing the border to Egypt, there was a cartoon was published, basically Egypt in the shape of a woman asking from the Hamas not to attack the border of Egypt, not to attack the Israelis. And this was published in the Egyptian newspaper. In the educational system, in the social study for 7th grade, I have here a book of the social study of the 7th grade of the Egyptian education system. In page number 2, Israel is not on the map. In page number 2, Israel is not on the map. In page number 73 to 75, basically the book is teaching the children, 7th grade, that the Jewish community, you cannot trust them, that they are the enemy, you must fight them, and the peace basically with them is useless. This is in the 7th grade in the school books of the Egyptian schools. Finally, the Baha'i community. I will not speak too much about the Baha'i community because Susan is here. She will be basically completing me, and she's my dear friend. She's a wonderful person, but she will take it from me from there. Mr. Chair, Egypt has acceded to the Convention Against Torture. Moreover, Egypt has signed the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the International Covenant on Ethnic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The Egyptian government is obligated to respect the rights of the individuals and the group in the community, in their country. But they failed to fulfill this commitment and to respect their agreements. Talking about Pakistan, starting by Pakistan, or ending by Pakistan. Pakistan is an Islamic republic with a population of around 125.2 million, was created from 1947 independence and separation of India into Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. The Muslims in Pakistan is around 97%, Sunni is 77%, Shia is 20%. The other minorities is around 3%, include 1.69 Christians. And the rest is Hindu, Ahmadis, and the rest of them. There are 3 subjects I will be discussing about Pakistan. The blasphemy law, which is 295B, 295C of the Pakistani Penal Code, started in early 1980s. This law, basically, the blasphemy law, is about this. If you said anything against the Prophet Muhammad, against Islam, against Quran, if you discuss the idea of Islam, if you argue about Islam, if you have anything about Islam, you deserve the death penalty immediately. And this is 295B and 295C all about in Pakistan. Now, this law been used regularly since then to terrorize the minorities and been used in personal dispute and tools to persecute and discriminate against them. For example, Jandish Kamar, 22 years old, He's a young Hindu factory worker. He worked in leather factory in Karachi. Basically, he had a discussion with his Muslim co-workers about what is Islam. In the end, his co-workers, they said that he commit crime against the blasphemy law. They killed him on the spot. They beat him to death. Hindu young man. Dr. Ruben Sardar, May 2nd, 2008, was charged by the blasphemy in Hazaratown, making remarks about, he was accused that he commit crime, blasphemy law, because he made remarks about the Prophet Muhammad beers. So his family was attacked, his police arrest him, now he's in jail facing death penalty. And basically our resources indicate that two of his clients have a personal dispute with him. Dr. Sardar served his community for over 30 years. But Dr. Sardar served his community. He helped the poor, he helped the people, and in the end, he is now thrown in jail for no specific reasons. The second issue that I will be speaking about Pakistan is the rape. The rape of the Christians girls in the Christian community and the minorities. The rape of these girls of the minorities. Now, our resources indicate that there is over 300 cases a year of rape of Christians, girls, and minorities. It happens every year. Now, I'm not talking about just rape as a crime in Pakistan, because Pakistan is the worst country when it comes to the crime of rape. In Pakistan, according to the Pakistani Human Rights Commission, in Pakistan, there is 8 rape cases every year in Pakistan. That's around 3,000 rape cases in Pakistan every year, 3,000. Now, does not include when a husband rapes his wife. Because in the Pakistani law, it's not considered wrong when a husband rapes his wife. Or when a man rape a woman that he will be marrying her later. They will not report that because it's not wrong in the Pakistani law eventually. I'm not talking about this. And not only the rape law in Pakistan is a whole another story. We need different committee for that. The law in Pakistan, every woman that been raped, she need to bring 4 male witnesses that she been raped. 4 male witnesses. And if she did not bring 4 male witnesses, she will be accused by zina. Zina is adultery, and or she will be accused by kidb, and kidb is basic false accusation, and she will end in jail if she don't have 4 witnesses male witnesses. So I'm not talking about this. I'm talking when rape. I'm talking about the 300 cases of rape against the Christians, girls, and the minorities in Pakistan that they've been used to force them to convert to Islam or as a punishment to their family for not converting to Islam, such as Neha Munir. Neha Munir is 2 years and a half. Her father was a farmer, a Christian. He's a Christian farmer. The owner of the farm went to him, told him, I want you to convert to Islam. He told him, no, I respect you, respect me, everybody have his own belief. Okay. His father left. The son of the owner of the farm, he's 18 years old, by the name Abid Hussein. Abid Hussein, he's 18 years old. He went, he attacked the girl 2 years, he kidnapped her 2.5 years old, and he raped her. If we can show them, please, the tape. This is an interview with Neha and Neha family.
I was working in a farm with a Muslim family. We too were living there. He invited me that you all family should embrace Islam and come to Islam. When we totally refused and we will not come under their pressure, then they abused my daughter. I was working in a farm. He came to my home and he saw my young daughter and kidnapped her. When I went back to my home, so I saw my daughter was not there. Then on one field I saw him that he was raping her, and when he saw me, he left her unconscious with bleeding and ran away. I wanted to catch him, but when I saw my daughter unconscious and full of bleeding, I was not able to even go any further, so I took her in my hands. She has a nightmare and she's still traumatized. And there are some depression, but there are many other things which I cannot show on her body. She cannot pass urine in a normal way, so they made another hole from here to pass urine and the other thing. On every knock on our door, we think that someone came to kill us. Yes, I went to the police, but due to their pressure, the police was not listening to us. Till now, they are threatening us. They are after our lives and they wanted to kill us.
Put the second tape, please. In closing, what you will be seeing next is the bricks factory in Pakistan. The bricks factory in Pakistan is basically the minority being used to work as a slave and labor in a bricks factory. Basically, they go to them, they tell them, we give you a loan, we give you a salary, you come work in this bricks factory. When they go to work in this bricks factory, they basically, there is no salary, there is nothing, they become a slave working in the bricks factory. They've been tortured, child labor, as we will be seeing. Mr. Chair, in the closing, go ahead. Go ahead. There is around 5 locations of the bricks factory in Pakistan. This, the one that we visited, was an hour and a half south of Lahore last February. And the people have been basically tortured, persecuted, and whoever will try to run, they will chop his finger, as we can see here. And the only way to get out of there is basically by give them 2 options: to sell them their kidney or to convert to Islam. Mr. Chair, in my closing, and I'm sorry for taking very long time, I will not give recommendations and I will not say my closing remarks. But the only thing that I will be telling all of you, that I thank you for hearing this evidence and I thank you for inviting us. I don't know why there is persecution, and I don't know why people persecute people because they are different. But that's what I know. I know that freedom is bulletproof. I know that we will prevail. I know that they can kill the dreamer, but nobody can kill the dream. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you all. I rest my case. Done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Sweet, please.
There were two pieces of documentation that the witness offered. One was a list of people that were arrested illegally and detained that would need to be translated from Arabic, I think. And the other one was a school text that was blatantly anti-Semitic. I'm wondering if that witness is considering that permanently tabled with the committee so that we can do the translation. We can have that as evidence. And I'd also like to ask if the witness has more detail on the locations of the brick factories in Pakistan, if you also table that with the committee as well.
Right. So we have three documents that Mr. Sweet has asked to be tabled with the clerk for translation. Perhaps at the end of the meeting, our clerk can pursue that with Mr. Septi, please. Yes. Thank you. All right, let's continue then. Our second witness, we're deviating from the order that was shown here. The witnesses are working in a coordinated manner, and that's the reason why the first presentation was a good deal longer than the rest will be, just so you know. The second witness to speak now will be Madame Desloges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Chantal Desloges. I am a lawyer who specializes exclusively in immigration and refugee matters. I have 14 years of experience in immigration and refugee work, and I'm a certified specialist by the Law Society of Upper Canada in both immigration and refugee law. I'm one of only 14 people to hold both designations. For the majority of the 14 years of my experience in immigration work, I've been dealing with people who are persecuted for various reasons and the application of international law instruments to people in those situations. And a great deal of my practice in the past 5 years has been focused on persecution of religious minorities from every area of the world. And that would include not only certain specific religious minorities, but any religious minority, whether it be Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, whatever the case may be. In my experience, in my practice, I have seen the level of persecution of religious minorities increasing exponentially. And I believe, and this just is my personal opinion, that it's because religious polarization across the world is becoming a more serious problem, not only for those directly involved in the persecution, but for all of us as well. And for this reason, this issue really should be more and more on the political radar, and I haven't seen this to be the case. Now, this subcommittee today has the privilege and the responsibility to make suggestions, to make recommendations to various areas of government on what can be done to address international human rights issues. And I would suggest that by focusing on the issue of persecution of religious minorities, this committee has an opportunity to increase the security of Canadians, to maintain Canada's image as a forerunner in international human rights, and also to generally improve our image abroad. My focus today is going to be to concentrate on some problematic areas of Canada's treatment in religious minority cases and to make some recommendations how that can be improved. And the good news is it can all be done without reinventing the wheel at all. I point out that I think an integrated approach to the dealing with religious persecution internationally is necessary. And what I mean by that is that we not only fight the war on one front, that first of all, foreign affairs is important, focus on international trade and things like that are also important, and also focus on our country's refugee policy and our immigration policy are also important. And while these things may not necessarily always fall under the same ministry, it is important that they are coordinated. Why is it so important? First of all, persecution of religious minorities is the proverbial canary in the coal mine. When religious minorities are persecuted, it's almost always the case that in those same locations, women are persecuted, homosexuals are persecuted, political minorities are persecuted as well. If we deal with religious minorities head-on, we also protect other types of minorities and we promote democracy. It's also important, I believe, from an international security perspective, since it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the countries where these persecutions of religious minorities are happening are the very same countries where terrorism is also gaining a firm foothold. One important focus that I believe is in the brief that has been filed by One Free World International. Do you have the brief? Has that been given to you? It has, okay. It is to focus on the use of trade and aid provisions to encourage positive human rights behavior and to discourage negative human rights behavior. Cultures which have an atmosphere of impunity for religious persecution usually do not abandon that way of life just because it's the morally right thing to do. There has to be a system in place to enforce the positive behavior. And one of the most important ways, of course, to influence people's behavior is to hit them in their wallet. I've also been pleased to note that the current government has been more and more willing on an international stage to make human rights statements, and specifically I have in mind the issue of China. And we need to have more of that. And finally, coming to my area of expertise, another way to reinforce human rights respect is to provide shelter to those who have not had their rights protected and to those who are in danger of persecution worldwide. Providing shelter to those people is not only a humanitarian thing, it also sends a clear statement to other governments that their behavior is unacceptable. Let's start by having a quick look at the inland refugee system. I have a couple of suggestions on things that could happen to make that a little bit more sensitive to the rights of religious minorities. Despite whatever you might hear in the press, despite the foibles of our refugee determination system, it is actually a good system. And it does have appropriate checks and balances. I believe that the problems that religious minorities experience is more to do with a lack of understanding of the people in the system and a lack of sensitivity towards people of faith, more so than a real flaw in our actual system. What I found is that secularism, of course, is a very highly valued commodity in our public service, as it should be. But there is such a thing as secularism gone too far. And I often find, particularly when dealing with immigration and refugee officials, that there is not only a gross misunderstanding of what people of faith are all about, there is even a lot of times some hostility towards people who hold those beliefs. And the understanding of how people of faith operate is actually crucial in refugee determination. And what I'll do is, instead of conceptualizing it for you, let me give you a couple of real-life examples that I personally have witnessed. About a month or so ago, I was litigating a refugee claim of an Iranian national who was converted from Islam to Christianity. In that refugee claim, I encountered a board member who was not someone of an ethnic minority. She was a white woman of British background who had never heard of a non-denominational Christian church. And when my client began testifying that he was a member of a non-denominational church, she was completely blown away. She had never even heard that that was possible. And then when he also added that his church doesn't actually meet an official church building, but that he belonged to what they call a home church, she was equally completely flabbergasted. And fortunately, on that day, we had the good luck to have a tribunal officer who was himself of Christian background and who was able to give the board member a little bit of guidance on, well, yes, actually, there are a lot of non-denominational Christians all over the world. Another example, a couple of years ago, I had a claimant who was asked by a board member to explain the reasons why he had converted from Islam to Christianity. Now, he was describing his personal viewpoint, which was that he felt that Islam was violent and that he was attracted to the message of love that he perceived in the Christian faith. The member cut him off in the middle of his description and stated that the Old Testament was equally or more violent than Islam, so this explanation made absolutely no sense to him. Now, in my view, that member clearly crossed the line in terms of impartiality and imparted a personal opinion into that hearing, which was not appropriate, not to mention very intimidating for the client who's testifying. In other cases, I've noticed that refugee board members have sort of a standard set of quiz questions that they have for religious minorities, not only Christians, also Shia Muslims, same thing, in order to determine whether they really are a member of that faith group. The problem is that the members seem to think that a claimant has to be a theologian in order to be a genuine member of that faith community before they'll accept that it's true. The questions are often really difficult, and there seems to be a lack of understanding that people convert between religions for a whole host of many different reasons, many of which have nothing to do with knowledge of Holy Scripture and, theology or doctrine. And it also ignores the fact that anybody who has a set of those questions, a very clever liar, can easily subvert the system by simply memorizing the answers to the questions. Now, board members are not bad people. They're not stupid people either. What they need is a little bit more training on sensitivity on religious issues and specific faith groups.
It'll take very long.
I've seen plenty of examples of people who were refused.
I just apologize for interrupting you. There's a problem with your microphone, and I'm going to ask that we give you a second microphone. The technician will set you up.
Thank
My
you.
apologies for the interruption.
Is that better? Thank you. I also agree with the other recommendations that are set out in the One Free World International brief. One of them that I'll mention specifically is that I think the board needs to use some discretion when they're deciding which board members and which interpreters they're going to use in different refugee cases. Because what often ends up happening is you get an interpreter or a board member that's from the ethnic or religious group that persecuted the claimant in the first place. And while I would never suggest that there is an actual bias on part of those people, it's the perception to the claimant. I mean, if you can imagine that you've been tortured in your country by a person of a specific religious or ethnic group, and then you show up in court on the day of your hearing, and the person who's staring you down is actually a member of that group, it's a very serious problem. It really inhibits people being able to remember details accurately and to be comfortable enough to tell their story. I would also advocate that the board needs to rely increasingly on the use of real experts in the determination of religious claims. At the Refugee Board, what they do is they rely heavily on general human rights documents, such as briefs that are prepared by people like Amnesty International or the United States Department of State. While those can be interesting background information, there is a strong argument that any organization almost that writes these briefs tends to have their own inherent biases, particularly the United States Department of State, which obviously is a political organ of the United States. And when they write their international human rights reports, they tend to be harder on the people that are not on their list of political favorites at that moment, and easier on the countries that they want to foster good relationships with. And I've noticed that particularly with the country of Egypt. Now, leaving the Refugee Board, I also want to make some comments on the refugee determination that occurs outside Canada at our Canadian embassies. I have some comments about that. I do a lot of these types of cases, refugees who are outside Canada who are applying to our embassies for protection to be able to come here. I am regularly shocked by the apparent complete lack of understanding of refugee law that is exhibited by a lot of visa officers. Even the most basic legal tenets of our refugee system, they appear not to understand them, which I find really, really appalling. What ends up happening is that the people who apply for refugee status outside Canada don't get half of the kind of good assessment that they would get if they were inside Canada. And why in the world should a person who is persecuted just face the luck of the draw, whether they're actually able to make it to our border and make a claim? It should be the same treatment. And let me just give you a couple of examples of real-life situations that I've seen at our embassies. I saw an Iraqi Christian family that was refused on credibility grounds because the officer could not believe that the nasty terrorist would write a death threat on flowered paper. I'm not joking. I don't have to make this up. Another family was rejected because even though all of the other Christians in Iraq were being exterminated, nothing's actually happened to you yet. These are mistakes of the most juvenile order, something that you would never get away with at the board in Canada, and which the court would easily overturn. However, a lot of these people don't have the resources to litigate their cases in the court. There was a time a couple of years ago where there was such an enormous disparity between the acceptance of Iraqi Christian cases inside Canada compared to outside Canada that there was actually a committee of concerned Iraqi Christians that convened around this issue and asked for a meeting with the minister, which did happen in March. Now, numerous recommendations were made from the Iraqi Christian Committee to the Minister of Immigration, and they included such things as the following. Number one, they wanted some kind of recognition that the Christians of Iraq are a particularly vulnerable subgroup, and there was a lot of evidence brought to bear to prove that this is actually the case. I should note that also the countries of France and Germany have made public statements to this effect lately, just within the past few months. A second recommendation was to increase the number of Iraqi Christian refugees that are admitted, because the government has what they call targets, which are actually more like quotas in terms of people from various regions that they can accept, and we felt that was too low. Thirdly, we wanted them to allow people who had previously been refused to reopen their cases and have them get a second look. And fourth, again, deal with the problem of using interpreters who are from the persecuting group, whether ethnically or religiously. Now, I'm very happy to say that the minister did, within several weeks of the meeting, make an announcement that she was increasing the number of refugees that would be admitted from Iraq. But she failed to implement any of the other recommendations of the committee, including making specific provisions for the Iraqi Christian minority. And incidentally, what she did is she didn't increase overall the number of refugees. All she did was she subtracted from the Middle East quota and allocated more of those positions to Iraqis, which in my opinion is just robbing Peter to pay Paul. It doesn't really solve the overall problem. The minister's press secretary was later consulted about this problem, and he said there's no plan to recognize any specific religious group in Iraq as being particularly vulnerable, and that we would take our direction from the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees and that matter. This is despite all the evidence that was submitted about this minority. And honourable committee members, the last time I checked, the UNHCR is not the democratically elected government of Canada. We need to make our own decisions and our own policies when it comes to refugee protection. Germany and France are taking the lead on this issue. And I wonder, why is it that we are so afraid to say what is actually a fact, that the Iraqi Christians are more at risk than any other group existing inside Iraq? Why are we afraid to say that? That is not right. Another problem in the Iraqi Christian cases that most of you probably wouldn't know about, but which I believe is going to get some media attention soon, is the subgroup of Iraqi Christians that are Armenian ethnicity, of which are quite a few in Iraq. There is a new trend at our Canadian Embassy in Damascus to reject Armenian cases and tell those people who are clearly qualified for refugee status here and have been sponsored that, no, why do you need to come to Canada? Why don't you apply for status in Armenia? This is a country that they've never been to, where they don't speak the language and they don't know anyone. That would be something like telling Jews from the former USSR, well, why do you need to come to Canada? Why should you be a refugee here? You just apply and go to Israel. So it absolutely makes no sense as a logical point. And my last point is extremely important and I think extremely timely right now. There are many members of religious minorities abroad that are in situations of persecution, but for a variety of different technical legal reasons, don't fit within the definition of a refugee, and they don't fit within any other recognized immigration program. These people need to have access to an alternative method of applying for status in Canada. And one of the most important ways that they currently do that is by requesting humanitarian and compassionate consideration on their cases. Basically what they're saying is, look, I know I don't qualify under any particular program, but this is my sympathetic situation, and I want you to at least consider it and let me know whether you could consider making an exception for me. However, as you will all know, Bill C-50 was voted on last week, and one of the powers that the minister has given herself is to have increased discretion over the use of humanitarian and compassionate discretion abroad at our visa posts, overseas humanitarian cases, which is exactly what I'm talking about now. Now, nobody knows how the minister intends to use this power. But obviously, it's an issue of very great concern for people in this type of situation. And let me give you two concrete examples of people who would be affected if this provision is changed. First of all, this is a real case. An Iraqi Christian family, all medical doctors, living here in Canada, doing very well. They sponsored their parents who are living in Iraq at the current time. Fine, they qualify to sponsor them. There's no issue there. The problem is they have an elderly auntie who's lived with them since they were born, who never got married and never had any children of her own. She's an old woman, a Christian, who will be left completely alone if the rest of the family comes to Canada. Her only option is to ask for humanitarian and compassionate discretion. And thankfully, she's recently been approved. But if this provision of the Act is tampered with in any way, I fear that someone in her situation may not be able to be accepted in the coming times. Another example, I have a young Catholic lady living in Sri Lanka. She's also of Tamil ethnicity. And because of her religion and her ethnicity, she's in serious persecution right now. She has a friend in Canada who's willing to provide for her. There's no immigration program under which she qualifies, because you cannot be a refugee while you're still living inside your own country. That's part of the refugee definition. So again, the only option for her is humanitarian and compassionate consideration. So in my view, the minister should be urged to not affect the scope of discretion in those kinds of cases. So those are my submissions. Honourable members, I thank you for your time. I'd be happy to field questions at the end.
Thank you, Madam Deloge. Our third witness is Peter Batty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. International Christian Voice is a human rights organization which is the voice of voiceless religious minorities of Pakistan. It is the voice of those who are oppressed, victimized, terrorized, discriminated, and persecuted due to holding different faith than the Muslim majority. Through dialogue, seminars, conferences, and public meetings, we provide awareness and highlights the plight of religious minorities of Pakistan. International Christian Voice is also assisting new Pakistani Christian immigrants, those do not have any family friend or anybody in Canada. Due to our support, they can eliminate barrier to integrate in our Canadian society. I just want to give you over detail of the Christians and other religious minorities of Pakistan. That Christians of Pakistan contributed to the creation, development, and prosperity of Pakistan. And until today, Pakistani Christian and minorities are serving Pakistan wholeheartedly. Pakistan was not created as a theocratic, but as a progressive and democratic state. The father of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in his policy speech in the First Constituent Assembly of Pakistan on August 11, 1947, categorically said, you are free to go to your mosque, and you are free to go your temples and other places of worship. You may belong to any religion, caste, and creed that has nothing to do with the business of state. We all are citizens and equal citizens of one state. But unfortunately, after the death of Quaid-e-Azam, every ruler used religion to prolong their rule, and discriminatory laws were promulgated into the Constitution of Pakistan to discriminate, victimize the religious minorities of Pakistan. Extremist religious organizations were encouraged by the existence of these discriminatory laws, and they used those laws to persecute, victimize, terrorize, and discriminate against the religious minorities. The blasphemy law, which Brother Majid already said, widely misused by the extremists against Christians and other religious minorities. Many Christians are killed during trial, and many are in prison, living in miserable condition. And their families are harassed, attacked, and compelled to leave their homes. During the America-led coalition attack on Iraq and Afghanistan, Christian churches, institutions, schools, and other properties were attacked. The Islamic extremists associated Pakistani Christians with America and Israel. And this is the one poster as example for this. The present martial law and absence of democratic rule in Pakistan created a vacuum in Pakistan society, which was filled with extremist organizations. Now the organizations also disturb law and order and peace of Pakistan and tarnish the image of country. I have few examples which I want to be shown to the chairperson and committee. This person, his name is Naveed Anjum. He was 18 years old and he went to mosque to drink the water. And the mosque priest or Maulvi told them, because you enter the mosque, you shouldn't go without accept the Islam. And he was tortured and finally died, but he denied to convert to Islam. This is our Catholic bishop, Diocese of Faisalabad. He gave his life to protest against a blasphemy law, because several people there are problem in blasphemy law. This is a small girl, which Brother Majid already showed. This is the recent picture when she was attacked. This was the picture that we have. There is other picture I want to show you. This is 18 years old girl, and she was raped in the gunpoint at the church. Islamic militant came into the church and raped her inside the holy place of the church. And still victims are away from there, and nobody had reached to them because everybody afraid from the Islamic militants and their forces. However, the Democratic of Pakistan government now just came in the Pakistan People Party, handling the situation wisely. Mr. Prime Minister of Pakistan, Syed Yusuf Raza Gilani, announced that government will protect and restore the basic announced and give the representation of the minorities in Senate. Minorities hope that maybe they will follow the commitment of the founder of Pakistan and give the rights of the minorities. The religious minorities of Pakistan, especially Christians, despite victimization and attack, remain loyal and patriotic citizens of Pakistan. They are proud to be a Pakistani and are ready to sacrifice for all well-being of Pakistan. Mr. Chair, on behalf of Pakistani Christian and other religious minorities of Pakistan, I urge following recommendation before the committee that the Canadian government, international human rights organizations, and our political parties play a role to promotion for true democratic culture, human rights, religious freedom, and improvement of plight of religious minorities of Pakistan. That the Canadian government extend refugee status to the religious minorities of Pakistan. We understand that the poverty is one of the reasons for social injustice. Therefore, the government seeks ways and means of socio-economic development for religious minorities of Pakistan from government and non-government agencies. I hope that Government of Canada will take these issues very seriously and continue to advocate of respect of human rights in Pakistan, including religious freedom. I trust that human rights and other organizations will take principal position in this important issue. On behalf of International Christian Voice and Pakistan Canadian Christian community, I am thankful to you and all committee members to give me this privilege to plight the Christians of Pakistan with you and our other members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatti. Our fourth witness today is Susan Thomas. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking the Subcommittee on International Human Rights and Reverend El-Shafii for the invitation to contribute the experience of the Baha'i community to this inquiry into the treatment of religious minorities in Pakistan and elsewhere, but which I understand will focus on Pakistan, Egypt, and Iraq. The situation of the Baha'is varies across the region. Some countries recognize the Baha'i faith as a religious minority in their constitutions, and Baha'is practice their faith freely. In others, the Baha'i faith is proscribed and Baha'is are persecuted. Where Baha'is suffer human rights violations, they are commonly justified on theological or political grounds. As a post-Quranic religion, one founded after Muhammad, the Baha'i faith is often regarded as a heresy and its followers as apostates. And the location of the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel, which was an accident of history, is regarded as evidence of links to Zionism. I'll discuss two of the three country situations and make a very brief reference to an urgent situation in a neighboring country and conclude with some recommendations. First, to Pakistan. And after what we've just heard, this will sound surprising, and I hope it really is a point of hope. Where the National Spiritual Assembly, the elected consultative body that administers the affairs of the Baha'i community, was incorporated in 1985, and the Baha'i faith was listed as one of Pakistan's non-Muslim religious minorities in amendments to its constitution in 1981. The 9,900 Baha'is of Pakistan enjoy cordial relations with their government. Their marriages are recognized. Their children are granted leave from school for their holy days, and Baha'i publications have been presented to political and other leaders. The meeting of a Baha'i delegation with President Musharraf in '96 was covered by TV news, and Baha'i activities are widely advertised and reported in the country's media. This April, President Musharraf extended heartfelt congratulations to the Baha'is on Rizwan, a Baha'i holy day, and the Minister of Minorities spoke at the Rizwan celebrations, which were hosted by the ministry. This could be an encouraging example of the capacity of a Muslim state to accommodate post-Quranic and therefore any other religious minorities. Next to Egypt, where the Baha'i faith dates back to 1867, and Egyptian Baha'is enjoyed relative freedom of religion, and their community flourished for almost 100 years. However, since the adoption of a presidential decree, number 263 in 1960, banning Baha'i institutions and activities and calling for the confiscation of Baha'i properties, the Baha'i community has been under constant police surveillance. Baha'is have been imprisoned solely because of their religion on 6 occasions, large groups arrested. They've not been permitted to gather to celebrate holy days. Their homes have been searched. Baha'i literature has been confiscated and destroyed. They've been able to marry legally unless they declare themselves to be Muslims, which they're not willing to do. And Baha'i children are regarded as illegitimate, leading to difficulties with such matters as pensions, inheritance, divorce, alimony, and custody of children. With the computerization of national ID documents in Egypt, the situation of the Baha'is became critical. Egyptian citizens are required to carry ID cards and must present them to access such things as medical care, banking, employment, education. When ID documents were issued manually, Baha'is were permitted to leave the space for religion blank. But since they've been computerized, a Baha'i must identify himself or herself as Christian, Jew, or Muslim. And if they can't or won't, they don't get an identity document, which effectively strips them of their civic identity. And they're subject to arrest if they're picked up in a police check. Several Baha'is filed lawsuits, and in April 2006, a lower court ruled that a Baha'i couple had the right to state their religion on their ID card. The Ministry of Information appealed this ruling to the Supreme Administrative Court, and in December, the judge ruled against the Baha'is. This case attracted a great deal of media interest, some of which supported the Baha'is, and a number of human rights organizations, long reluctant to speak out, advocated on their behalf. And so in January 2008, when the lower court issued a judgment on another 2 cases, ruling that the space for religion could be left blank, have a line drawn through, or state other, as determined by the Ministry of Information, the Egyptian government did not appeal the court's ruling and stated its intention to uphold it. However, the court's decision has yet to be implemented. It was made in January, and to date, Baha'is have been unable to obtain identity documents. Although our focus today is Pakistan, Egypt, and Iraq, I will say a few words about the situation of the 300,000 Baha'is in Iran, where the government's official policy is the eradication of its largest religious minority as a viable community. The history of the Baha'i faith in Iran has been marked by episodes of persecution. However, since the outset of the Islamic Revolution, the persecution has been relentless and more recently has intensified. There is much to be said, but I will limit myself to the matter of extreme urgency. In the early 80s, all the members of the National Spiritual Assembly, the governing body of the Baha'is of Iran, were disappeared. Those Baha'is elected to replace the missing members were arrested and summarily executed. Shortly thereafter, Baha'is were required to disband their official institutions. Over time, ad hoc groups were named to serve the community as best they could at the national and local level. This was done with the knowledge and tacit assent of the Iranian officials who from time to time called those representatives in for questioning. On the 14th of May, 2008, Iranian authorities arrested 6 of the 7 members of the National Ad Hoc Group. The 7th member had been arrested in Mashhad in early March. Within 2 days of the arrest, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs issued a statement, and there's been widespread media coverage and unprecedented support from Muslim intellectuals and human rights organizations. But families of those prisoners had no word from them until last week, when a few of them were permitted to call home. As yet, there's been no word from others. Iranian officials are still refusing to confirm the prisoners' whereabouts, and no formal charges have been laid, although a government spokesperson has falsely alleged that they pose a threat to national security. According to the UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, religious intolerance and the persecution of religious minorities is on the rise, and with it comes untold human suffering as well as a threat to human security and development. The solution to state-sponsored persecution of religious minorities requires that states rely on rule of law, objective criteria, and a human rights framework, rather than on theological issues in their relationship to their religious minorities. We would therefore urge the SDIR to initiate a study to identify effective foreign policy initiatives that would promote respect for freedom of religion or belief, prevent religious intolerance, and protect those suffering religious persecution. And more specifically, we would urge the SDIR to encourage Egypt to apply the court's ruling on identity documents to all Egyptian Baha'is without delay, to conduct an in-depth study of the human rights situation in Iran, and we've been assured by a number of members that this is under consideration, and to adopt a motion concerning the arrest of the Baha'i leadership. I'll conclude here, but I would be happy to engage in further discussion or to propose such strategies for your consideration, and would welcome an opportunity to meet with any one of you who wish to explore any aspect of our testimony in greater depth. Thank you very much for your attention and this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn now to our fifth and final witness. Firidun Zia will be speaking, and Mr. Youssef will be serving as his interpreter. So please go ahead.
My name is Firidun Kuryakos Zaya. First of all, I'd like to thank the chair for giving me the opportunity to come here.
تاريخ 2006 24/9/2006 بغداد لما كنا في كنيسة للصلاة.
On September 24th, 2006, I was at the Mass at church in Baghdad.
الساعة 10 تقريبا بعد الصلاة سمعنا صوت انفجار كنا داخل الكنيسة.
Just after 10 o'clock, we heard a bombing noise outside the church.
لما سمعنا صوت انفجار خرجنا على الصوت طلعنا برا لزمنا الباب وما خلينا الناس تطلع برا.
We knew this is a trap for a bigger bomb, so I was helping two other people in preventing people from leaving the church and closing the doors of the church.
ولا هوسة يعني صارت هوسة ورادوا يطلعون وقوا مقابل عمارة كريستيان يعني سراية وخليناهم يطلعون. بالأثناء صار يعني خوف ورعب من الناس من النسوان.
Everyone wanted to flee, and the neighboring buildings wanted to come on site and see what is going on. Everybody was afraid, and there was chaos.
من بعدها من 10 دقائق إلى ربع ساعة صار انفجار ثاني بالسيارة بصوت قوي.
There was a second bombing within about 10 to 15 minutes of the first one, where Mr. Zaya was standing just outside of the church.
طبعا ما شفت نفسي إلا من بطح الأرض وعدة أشخاص واقعين على الأرض.
All I can remember is I was on the floor with other people on the floor as well beside me. One of them was dead. I could not hear anything but a buzzing noise in my ears.
طبعا ظليت أنزف مدة تقريبا الوقت من ربع ساعة إلى 20 دقيقة وأصرخ
My leg was injured and I was bleeding very badly. I was screaming for help, and no one came for at least 15 to 20 minutes.
بعدها طلعوا القس الكنيسة أول واحد شافني يعني معني مستقيم على الأرض هو وكان واحد لاف معه مسعفين الإسعاف.
The first person to help me was the priest of the church, who helped me move outside of the church, and the ambulance people that helped him get to the ambulance. So the ambulance could not come in front of the church due to the bombing.
طبعا من نقلوني للإسعاف كانوا عدة أشخاص داخل الإسعاف ميتين.
There were already 3 bodies of dead people in the ambulance where Mr. Zaya was transferred to the hospital.
وبعدها أخذوني إلى المستشفى قالوا يعني نضطر نساقك اليمين.
When they took him to the hospital, he was informed that his leg would have to be amputated to save his life.
طبعا كانت متهشمة. بعد يعني الألم الأكثر بروني ولدي يعني بعد 3 شهور تقريبا خطفه.
What was more painful than my injury and the blast in church was the kidnapping of my son, which happened only months after this incident. And he's 24 years old.
طبعا بعد ما خطفوه هددونا التليفون.
He was called 3 days after the kidnapping of his son.
لأنهم يأخذون عائلة بناتي وأولادي وهربتهم إلى شمال العراق.
He took the family, the females in the family, his daughters and his wife, and fled them to the north of Iraq to be safe. And he stayed in Baghdad.
وأنا رجعت من الشمال من بغداد وقاموا يخابروني بعصابة يتفاوضون.
The militia, which is the Mahdi militia that kidnapped his son, were negotiating with Mr. Zaya.
طبعا طلبوا من عندي ما عرفاني طلعوا جزية $200,000 بداية وإلى كانوا يتكلمون معه يا 3 شروط نطيلة يعني. أول شيء يا إما يعلن إسلامه ثاني شيء سيارة يأخذ سيارة مفخخة يتجرها على الناس وثالث شيء $200,000.
Mr. Zaya was given 3 options to save his son. First option was given to his son to become Muslim, which his son refused. The second option was given to his son was to go on a mission to bomb people, basically use a car with bombs in it and go into a place and bomb it. And the third option was to have $200,000 given to the militia.
وبعدها قلنا لهم يعني حاولنا نفاوض معهم وقلنا لهم يعني ما عندنا هيك مبلغ يعني نجيب لكم. عدة مرات حاولوا ثاني يوم خابروني قالوا زين إذا معكم بابا خليه يدزلكم يعني الفلوس.
Many times Mr. Zaya told them we do not have that kind of money. The most we can have is about $5,000. You know, that would be the most we can have. And they kept pushing, even making jokes of getting them to call the Pope and asking him for money.
طبعا ما تفاوضنا على السعر ويوم بعد 10 يوم 13 هم أخذوا 3 يوم 13 خبروني 12 خبروني بالليل قالوا لي ما يعني كملت المبلغ. قلت له ما عندنا يعني من نقدر. قال إذا راح نقتله وتستلمه من طب العدلي.
The son was kidnapped on January 3rd of 2007, and on January 12th, 2007, Mr. Zaya was called again, and he was asked if he had the money. Since he did not have the money, they said, we're going to kill your son, and you can find him in the hospital where they keep all the bodies of dead people there.
طبعا انقطعت الاتصالات ما قاموا يخابرون. قلنا ندور بالمستشفيات الشرطة نلقى على يعني قالوا نقتله يعني خلاص فقدنا لنا. بعدين خبرونا أحد الأشخاص بأنه أعطونا اسمه من المستشفى. قالوا أكو شاب خطر بالمستشفى وهذا اسمه لحقوا عليه المستشفى.
Basically, the family lost hope, believing that their son was killed, And later on, a few days later, they had news from someone that knew the family, which passed on the news that there's someone in a hospital with the name of Atra, which is their son's name, and is alive. And at that point, Mr. Zaya went to the hospital to see if it's his son.
رحنا بحثنا عليه، أخذت الهوية، قالوا أنا عبالي يعني الميت هناك ياخذون الهوية على مود مستلم الجثة.
My apologies. Mr. Zaya believed that he was dead, and he wanted to receive his body, so he took his IDs with him.
وحاليا يعني أشكركم بحضوركم، خليتونا نحضر هنا، وأريد يعني مساعدتكم يعني لعلاجه، وحاليا وطبعا أثناء وجوده بالمستشفى هو تقريبا فاقد الوعي والوعي. كانوا يتكلمون اثنين شرطة.
This is heard from Atra, his son, while he was only sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious. There was two police officers speaking to each other beside him.
كان حد يقول يعني يحكي واحد لله، يقول له هذا مسيحي خليه نقتله يعني.
One of them was telling the other, "Did you know that this guy is Christian? Let's kill him. Let's shoot him, basically."
والآخر قال له هو ميت يعني هو ميت ليش؟
The second police officer replied, saying he's pretty much dead anyway. There's no point of bearing his guilt of shooting him.
سوري نسيت فقرة يعني من المستشفى من خابروني قالوا راح نقتلها، قال لي راح نمثل به المسيح.
When the hospital called him, sorry, not the hospital, the militia called him, Mr. Zaya just wanted to add a point that they said to him, we're going to act the scene of crucifying the Christ with him.
بس يعني أشكرهم وبحث طلقات وكما في سوري يعني ضربوه طلقتين بظهره.
Atra, his son, was when he was released by the militia, was shot twice in the back while he was handcuffed and left in the street. As far as I know, he was not attended to for 4 hours, so he's bleeding for 4 hours.
واحدة صارت بالنخاع الشوكي، والثانية صارت جوا انفجار يعني انفلات.
One of the bullets was stuck in his spinal cord, and the other bullet went in and out of his body, causing damage to a lot of his tissues, inside of his tissues.
طبعا سوينا العملية ببغداد سريعة وخوف وأطباء ما يعالجون المريض لمدة شهرين بقيت، وأهلي كانوا بالشمال العراق بس أنا يعني كنت وياه.
He was being treated for 2 months in Iraq, but for the poor equipment and the medical supplies over there, not much could be done.
من بعد شهرين يعني طلعنا جوازات باسبور ما كان عندنا لكل العائلة.
We did not have passports for the entire family, so we had to get the passports and be able to leave the country in order to leave the country.
طبعا من الشمال قبضت الباسبورتات ودزيتها لهم لأهلي عبروا لسوريا، وبعدين احنا من بعد شهرين شوي لأنه جراحاته كان كلش.
And when the passports arrived, he sent it to the family, to the mother and the daughters, in order for them to go to Syria, and then he followed them after a couple months with the son, with Atra, since he had too many injuries and could not be transferred.
بعد شهرين أنا وياه الطيارة يعني نقلتها على سدية من بغداد إلى سوريا.
He was transferred on a stretcher on an airplane from Iraq to Syria.
Thank you.
To the hospital.
اسبيطال بسوريا قمنا بالأخذ اسبيطال فرنسي من فرنسي نقلوه للإيطالي مستشفى إيطالي.
He was transferred to a hospital immediately, a French hospital in Syria, and later on was moved to another hospital.
وبعدها يعني مرلت له علاج تامة يعني قدمنا له خلقة كندا وبعد.
Basically, Atra is disabled right now from the waist down and was told that there is no medicine or solution for him in Syria. And that's why Mr. Zaya is hopeful and is praying to have a solution or medical solution for his son here in Canada.
أخيرا يعني شكرا أني قماية وبعدين والتقارير موجودة لأن بيلا تقارير موجودة للعراق ومستشفى تسبيطال كاترا ودي.
Mr. Zaya has brought his son's medical reports from Iraq and Syria and to provide it for anyone in Canada that can help him out. And he would like to thank the committee for giving him this opportunity and thank Father Majid from One Free World International to give him this opportunity to speak up. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee members will have noted that we've gone much longer than we normally do. I think as a practical matter, we will not be able to get through the business that I had hoped to attend in camera. So unless the committee objects, my proposal is this. We deal with the matters we plan to deal with in camera at the start of tomorrow's meeting. We'll start in camera. That way we don't have any problems with overruns causing us not to deal with that, and we'll go directly to questions. If that is acceptable to the committee, we will have to be very, very brief, and really we're looking at about effectively 3-minute rounds in order to get here by the end, perhaps 4 minutes to get by the end. Before I do that, however, I see Madame Deschamps.
Just a small point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. Tomorrow's session, are we expecting to be hearing from other witnesses who will be discussing the same subject matter as today? Because I can advise you that I was not at all aware of the subject matter. In fact, I did not receive a list of witnesses before this meeting took place today. So we would have perhaps appreciated to have been advised of this. Perhaps we could have suggested some witnesses as well on this particular subject matter. And also, is this a study that we're carrying out, or is this a subject that came up as a result of Mr. Sweet's motion?
This is a matter that came up. I believe the person initiated it was actually Mr. Kenny, was it, or perhaps it was Mr. Sweet, I can't remember. But whatever the case, notice has been sent out. I think perhaps the problem here is that because Madame Saint-Hilaire is the regular member of the committee but has not been here, and as you know, Madame Barbeau has sat in, perhaps notice was sent to one of their offices, or perhaps to both of the offices, as opposed to your own. It goes to Madame Saint-Hilaire's office. So I'm assuming that material was received on time. It was certainly sent out in a timely fashion. Our clerk can advise you as to that. It was sent out in a timely fashion, I believe, was it not?
There's notice of meeting, sir?
Yeah. And of the witnesses.
Well, the witnesses received information.
All right. What I'm going to suggest we do is, Madame Deschamps, is because this is taking up the remaining time we have to ask questions, perhaps you and I could discuss this offline or outside of the committee. Otherwise, we'll eat up much of the time we have available for asking questions. Is that reasonable? Mr. Silva, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me thank all the witnesses that came before this committee and say how important and valuable your statements and testimonies are today, because it truly do, in fact, shine a spotlight on the human rights abuses that are taking place and the persecution, specific in the area that we're dealing with today, which is religious persecution in the countries that was listed. I must say that also I would like to add that in relation to the Baha'i faith, I do have also a motion before this committee, and it's specific in the Baha'is and the persecution in Iran. We did not deal with the issue of Iran, but we do know that the Baha'is are certainly a minority group there that's very much persecuted for a very long time, and we are deeply distressed about the particularly arrests that are taking place in Iran, but also with the new legislations coming before the Parliament that will even further add to the persecution of the Baha'i faith. We are, as a community, deeply concerned by the country's failures, those countries that we had spoken, failures to protect the religious minorities, and the state-sponsored persecution as well that is taking place of those religious minorities. And we as Canadians as well, as parliamentarians, also have a duty as well, not just to speak out against those abuses that are taking place, but also through our own legislation that we have, through the immigration policies that we have and refugee policies that we have. And it was so good also to include in this presentation as well somebody who has in fact dealings with the with the Immigration Refugee Board, and some of the statements that was also made I think are very valid, because I have also witnessed in fact that where people have in fact been persecuted have gone before the IRB. And there is a need for sensitivity to understand that these individuals do need our assistance, and we cannot just simply send them back where they know there's going to be tortured and persecuted, that we, by doing so, in fact, are in compliance with that policy. So we have a responsibility as well to those refugees as well to make sure that they're protected and not being sent back to those places to be persecuted. There are so many hosts of questions. Unfortunately, our time is extremely limited today. But I would like to state that we are very much concerned. We appreciate your testimonies. We will do whatever we can here as in the committee. And if anybody has any further maybe action plan that you'd like to see it from this committee and this government, I certainly would I'd like to open up the floor for those who maybe want to make a very brief comment. It was this statement, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you. In that case, Madame Deschamps, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say that I support my colleague's statement, Mr. Silva, so as not to trample over my limited time. I do have a specific question for Ms. Desloges regarding the Immigration Act. The idea of creating an appeal section for refugees, would that guarantee or preserve or in some way safeguard those refugees who are here in Canada and who may not actually have an opportunity to express their views when they face return to their home countries where they would be under threat? I'm going to ask this question. I'm not exactly sure who raised the issue, but we know that Canada provides millions of dollars to Pakistan through SDIR, and there is some there's some trade of a value of $500,000, I believe, with Pakistan. How could the Canadian government in some way influence the conduct or laxism of the Pakistani government in that regard? We were talking about certain solutions. I believe some trade action between the countries, or in those countries where minorities are persecuted. I will stop here because I would really like to give you a moment. You had a whole host of recommendations, Mr. Shaffi. Perhaps you could tell us of a few of your recommendations.
With regard my recommendation, and I'm sorry that I didn't have the time to just go through. Well, with regard the immigration, my immigration recommendation, I think Ms. Delage is the best person to recommend in this field. Just one thing about immigration. In 1939, exactly in May 1939, there was a ship by the name St. Louis ship, came to the Canadian shore was full by Jewish people running from the Holocaust. At this time, our prime minister, his name was Mackenzie King. Mackenzie King, he used to speak to his mother ghost and used to ask his dog about foreign affairs. And he turned them around, and basically all of them was sent, and most of them was killed in the Holocaust. I don't believe that Canada can afford another St. Louis ship on their conscience. So this is number one. With regard to foreign affairs recommendation, and this was actually part of my recommendation, is to link the trade and the aid with the improvement of the human rights record in these countries. For example, Iraq, we made commitment to give Iraq $300 million between the year 2003 and 2010. Besides the export to Iraq is 269 million. The import is 1.5 billion. Pakistan export is 450 million. Import 243 million. Aid is 49.78 million. This is to Pakistan. In Egypt, is 348 million export, import 161 million, aid 25.8 million to Egypt. That's it. That's all the tax collector of the Canadian people, and I don't think that the Canadian people want to hear that their tax money going to support governments, that they are going to persecute the minorities. What you can do, not to cut the aid or the export or the, because you don't want to cut the aid. If you cut the aid, you lose your power, you lose the pressure on them. They can make it connected to the improvement. So if they improve it, the aid increase, the export increase, the import increase. If they not improve this record, it starts to downgrade the relationship, the aid, and all of this. And that can be a very great support to the minority there.
All right, thank you. Did you have?
Yes, well, because the first question was related to immigration, I believe you're talking about the Refugee Appeal Division, which has yet to be implemented, which is in the Act. The short answer to whether or not that would be an effective means of dealing with this, yes and no. I would prefer to see a system where we get it right the first time, as opposed to inserting another layer of appeal without necessarily having the knowledge and sensitivity training at the lower level. Because the risk is that once you get to the Refugee Appeal Division, if it were implemented, you're dealing with the same kinds of problems. So I would prefer to see the government make those, instead of, like I said, reinventing the wheel, make those minor modifications at the bottom level that would prevent us having to go to that length in the first place.
All right. Mr. Marsden, you're up next.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And hopefully there won't be a Komagata Maru, rather, or St. Louis again. We've had those in our histories. And in fairness to the government, there's been apologies made and a number of fronts, which probably is quite shocking to some people because they never thought we had reached the stage where those things would take place. What I think I'm hearing, though, from yourself, Mr. Delage, is there's a systemic problem in our immigration system, both at the review board stage and perhaps at the policy stage. Just for information, the Immigration Review Board, how many directors would there be on that board across the country? You spoke in your initial comments about some particular problems with, and it sounds almost like it could be individuals as opposed to systemic. Do you see the problems you quote as being systemic across the board or more individual in nature? Obviously, that speaks to the question whether we have, you can train people up with sensitivity training. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about in my constituency, Hamilton East Stony Creek has a lot of immigrants, new Canadians there, and there seems to be a higher number of deportations happening of them, than what we've seen before. And I'm very concerned about, the refugee applicants. No matter what the religious background, we should be protecting as many as we can. I'm very concerned if you could address those, please.
Okay, if I could just, your first question, I wasn't exactly clear on it. What did you mean by what number of directors are there on the? What do you mean by directors?
Across our country, in the review board system, how many people would actually be reviewing those applications? What would be the number you would think? I'm looking more in terms of whether we need training across the board, policy training. and how large scale that would be.
You're talking about refugee cases?
Yes, I'm talking about the boards that would be.
Yeah, well, there's a well-known shortage, actually, of refugee board members right now, which is another problem that is complicating, that they're not being appointed at the rate that we need to keep up with the attrition of members. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but they're a fair percentage short of where they should be. Your question about whether the problem is systemic, I think the problem is systemic because the problem is our human nature. I mean, anytime you have a human decision maker, you're going to run up against these problems of your own inherent biases, which aren't necessarily a bad thing. And you have people coming from various different backgrounds that there may simply be gaps in their knowledge, and they may not have these sensitivities towards people of faith that we would want them to sit on cases like this. So yes, I do think the problem is systemic, but that's not by any means a condemnation of the system that we have. With respect to your third question or comment about removals seeming to be on the upswing, I actually have no problem whatsoever with our government removing people that should be removed who are under valid removal orders and, have lost their various appeals or mechanisms for remaining here. However, what does cause concern for me is that when the system doesn't work the way it should, and that's, I think, the real issue here, is not removing people with deportation orders. I think the Canadian public would support that. But the problem is you want to make sure that your decision-making is valid before it gets to that point.
That was the point of my question.
Thank you very much. I'm going to see the clock as being at 5 minutes before 2. That will allow one government member to ask a question and get a response.
Well, actually, I'm going to try and do the impossible. Since we have 3 minutes, I'm going to just take one and try to give my colleague a question. So thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to all the witnesses for extraordinary testimony, and I'm glad we actually used the majority of the meeting for their testimony. I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, that the bulk or the one area that takes up the most work in my constituency office is refugee and immigration issues. And I've heard time and time again, so I was glad I heard it today from a source who is a legal advocate in the field, that there is an unprecedented amount of situations where those people who are seeking refuge actually are interviewed by those of the stripe that were persecuting them. And I think I'd like to see some way that we can investigate that more, that if this is happening consistently in our consular offices. But I'd like to leave two things. Mr. Silva alluded to the fact that, and I just wanted to make sure that our witnesses knew that if there's some specific recommendations, some paths forward, either now or post the meeting, that they'd like to submit to the committee, then we'd like to welcome them to do that. And also, I've had two specific groups, Mr. Al-Shafi, who have come and suggested, one, a broader refugee policy to get those who are persecuted out of Iraq, and I've had others who came to say that no, they would like us to find a solution for security, to make sure that there was not dwindling numbers, so that those who are left are less secure. And so I'd like to hear at some point in the future a written submission on that, and I'll give the rest of the time to my colleague.
I'll actually just thank all of the witnesses, particularly those that came from overseas. Mr. Bhatti, Mr. Zia, is it correct? They came from Pakistan and Iraq, respectively?
They are now living here in
really?
in Toronto. Okay. Both of them lives in Toronto now.
I thought we were bringing witnesses from overseas. I apologize. But in any event, I want to thank all of the witnesses for their bringing these issues to public light here in Canada and inspiring us as parliamentarians to respond in the best, in a way that's consistent with Canada's best values. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This gives me, just in the remaining moment, it allows me to thank our witnesses very much again, I think on behalf of all committee members. And it also gives me an opportunity to address publicly a question that Madame Deschamps had raised earlier, which is, are we going from this to a study? And the answer to that question is that's for the committee to decide. There certainly is material that would justify some form of study. You've been given an offer to submit further recommendations to this committee, so I think there's every possibility we might go forward with that if that is the committee's will. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, then. We are adjourned.
you.